Good afternoon once again to everyone, to all of our Wheel and Anchor members, to our Palaces of India webinar. This is a trip that we're going to be featuring next year, September 20th to October 4th, 2024. So it's time to get started. And yeah, thanks to everybody. I see a few more have joined in since we started. So, and I'm sure more will as we go along. A couple of quick words about Wheel and Anchor. And again, if you are a regular attendee, you can, just put me on mute for 2 minutes while I explain to those who are new to our community what we are all about. And I use the word community because that is really what the raison d'etre is of Wheel and Anchor. And of course, we're here to travel. So we are a community of travelers, and what brings us together, or why we set this up as a community, just as opposed to just another company that offers tours, is because what I've found in the 33 years that I have now been organizing trips for Canadians is that when you put a bunch of people together that have a like-minded view, and that's a buzzword for us, it's like-mindedness. And if you've read recently our Traveler's Creed, if you remember it when you signed up for Wheel and Anchor, there's a bunch of sort of, call it philosophies or ways of looking at the world and ways of looking at travel. And I could go on for a whole webinar about what that exactly means, but it's about a quest for learning. It's about respect for locals. It's about stopping and smelling the roses, so to speak. It's about, learning a couple of words in the local language to be able to say hello, and an effort to kind of connect with the people that are there. It's all these nuances that, those of us who traveled a lot around the world, a lot of it is kind of second nature, particularly as Canadians. And listen, we've all experienced other tourists from other parts of the world who don't necessarily aspire to those attributes. And, if you're like me, and, I admit maybe it's a little egotistical of me, but sometimes, and, I'm traveling here in the south of Spain at the moment, and, there are lots of tourists around, and they say things, they behave in ways that a lot of us kind of go, oh, really? This is not your country. And it's not our country either. But the point is that, we are, engaging with each other, and we are engaging with our surroundings in a way that is kind of mutually beneficial. Anyway, as I say, I could go on for hours about that, but those of you that have traveled with Wheel and Anchor before, you might get a sense of that, of who we're trying to be when we travel. And so the idea here is that we bring those of us who are like that all together. And so far, I think we're doing a pretty good job. And so inside of all of that, the goal is to be well-traveled. And when we say well-traveled, again, we talk about understanding a place and having the time and the approach to experiencing it such that it resonates with you when you go back, and you don't have to necessarily flip through the itinerary and go, oh, it's Monday, I must have been in Florence or something like that, but rather it's left you with an impression. It's connected you with that place. And this is really what we're up to, and the goal behind all of our trips. So enough about that. We want to get on with the webinar. Let me briefly introduce our team. This is not our entire team, but it is, well, I'm going to say the most important part of our team, but I'm saying that for Paula's benefit. She's shaking her head.
We can't do it without each other.
Yeah, exactly. We're all there for each other. So I'm Gordon Drager. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor. I came up with this concept about 5 years ago, again, having organized trips for Canadians for a long time. And in seeing how the kinds of trips that I organized in the past, and they were fine. And I see the way the industry works. I'm regularly out attending conferences and stuff like that. And I just believe that there is a better way to travel and a better way to experience the world. And that's my personal quest, is how do we have you, how do we collectively experience the world in a way that is beneficial for everyone. So that's kind of my raison d'etre, if you will. However, I couldn't do all this without an amazing team of people, in particular, the ones that you will come in contact with. Paula. Hello, Paula. Up in the Ottawa. And so I know a lot of you have already met Paula. You may have either talked to Paula or Barb, who are our trip specialists, who are the ones that deal with all of our members and answer your questions, get you signed up, and try to do the best job at being the frontline ambassadors for Wheel and Anchor until such time as you start the trip, in which case then our host takes over. And there's a whole bunch of other people beyond that sort of make it all happen. So that's the core team for today. Today, our agenda, of course, is, as usual, we're taking you on a little journey around India, around our version of India, and explain what that is and about. And that's, as I say, where we're going next year. Just a few shots. This was our last trip to India. We had planned to go since 2017. So it's been a number of years since we've gone back to India. A few things got in the way, like COVID. And there's been some concerns about India of late. And I know that, you've probably also, seen the media reports. There's some political differences of opinion, let's say, between our government and the Indian government. But rest assured that that has no bearing on the experience of India at this point in time. And I'm fairly confident it won't. It's just a lot of, politicians just spouting off as they do. And the life in India is as it was. In fact, it's as good as ever in the post-COVID era. So it's a great time to visit. Again, you can see here our group. In 2017, by the way, I took 20 people. We will not be taking as many people. We'll be taking a few less, I guess, between 12 and 18, a maximum of 18 on this trip. It's kind of the optimal size for doing the kind of trip that we're doing. And, this is a great shot actually of the group in front of the Amber Fort in Jaipur, which I'll tell you about in a few minutes. And we had so many laughs because I can honestly say, and this is what I say about being like-minded, is that everybody got on board with, our local guide. This was the chap down here. His name's Love, not necessarily our guide for next year. That hasn't been fully set yet, but he was an amazing representative of the country and just got us involved in so many different things. And I'll share that with you as we go along for explaining our trip for next year. So as usual, let me give you the high level overview. This trip, Palaces of India, is special because, first of all, we're going to be focusing on Rajasthan. And Rajasthan is the sort of semi-desert area in the northwestern part of India to the southwest of Delhi. So you can see in the inset map roughly the area we're talking about. Agra, of course, for those of you who are geography specialists, is not in Rajasthan, but the Golden Triangle, if you will, the three cities, Jodhpur, Udaipur, Jaipur, as well as Sawai Madhopur. We get a little safari in there. And then, of course, Agra, which is where the Taj Mahal is. This trip, I love it. Again, planes, trains, and automobiles. We're going to be flying down to Udaipur from Delhi. You, of course, get to Delhi, and I'll explain that in a second, by flying from Canada. You're obviously not going to take a boat there, but we are going on this trip over in three different ways. So we're flying to Udaipur. We're taking our mini coach to Jodhpur, the Blue City. We're flying again to Jaipur, which is what we didn't do the last time. And again, just a side note there, we try to make every trip a little bit different or a little bit better than the last one. We look at the feedback from our members. We're always tweaking. So this isn't a series of tours. This is specialized tour that we've developed based on our experience from before. Anyway, we're going to then take again a short mini coach ride down to Sawai Madhopur. We're going to do one leg by train because you have to do a bit of train in India just to experience it, because I think it's part of what India is all about. And it's not a super long train ride. We're going to take up to Agra and then the final leg again by mini coach. So this is what the program looks like. And then, and I'll mention it at the end, we're flying down to Kerala, which is down here at the southern tip of India for their extension program in the so-called backwaters region. And I'll get to that in a minute. So that is the overall geography of our program. So getting into the day by day. So obviously the program starts in Delhi, New Delhi. Now there's a New Delhi and there's an old Delhi. Of course, most of us relate to Delhi as New Delhi. And what's interesting about Delhi is that there is a New Delhi and there is an old Delhi. Where we're staying is in New Delhi. And New Delhi actually really emerged during the time of British colonialism. So they wanted to, the British, when they came in, as they did in a lot of the places they colonized, they wanted to kind of get rid of the remnants, a lot of the remnants of the old civilization, specifically the Mughal Empire, which dates back to the 16th century and is where a lot of the origins of modern day India came from. So they tore down mosques and all the rest of it, and they built up quite a grand city. And so for those of us who haven't been to India before, you kind of have this vision of, cows in the street and rickshaws and petty cabs and the chaos. That India still exists in Old Delhi, but in New Delhi, wow, it's wide open boulevards, tree-lined streets, big grand villas and palaces. Again, a lot built during the British colonial era. It's quite an amazing place. I actually, when I first went to Delhi, I was really surprised because it wasn't what I expected. Some of it was, but a lot of it wasn't. And this is what makes the city pretty interesting. So you're going to fly in from Canada. Just a couple of remarks about that. There's, at the moment, 2 nonstop flights from Toronto. From other cities in Canada, you pretty much have to make a connection either in Europe or in Toronto to get to Delhi. And so there's an Air Canada flight and an Air India flight. At the moment, the Air Canada flight, both nonstop, is actually an hour and 20 minutes longer than the Air India flight, which is odd. But when you think about it, Air Canada is prohibited at the moment from flying over Russian airspace. And when you do that loop, of course, you take a wide arc to the north. And so Air India is not. So therefore, their flight is a little quicker. And they both arrive at different times of the day. So something to think about if you're thinking about joining us for the program. It kind of doesn't make any difference. I mean, a lot of us prefer Air Canada because it's our home domestic carrier. But Air India is not that bad, actually. So it's something to consider when you're thinking about it. On the day of arrival, let's face it, it is a long flight. It's 13, 14 hours again, depending on which airline you're flying on. We don't plan a lot. When you arrive, we're going to bring you here. And this is really what I wanted to highlight. We titled this program Palaces of India for a couple of different reasons. One of them is because the hotels we're staying in. And so, and we did this on purpose because we had such an incredible time and our members were so blown away by the accommodations from the first time we went. This is something about India that is really, really special. And of course, there's 5-star hotels all over the world and, hotels that are, but let's be honest, a lot of us don't stay all the time in 5-star hotels because, if you stay at a true 5-star hotel in London, well, it's like one night is the price tag of our whole trip. Not quite, but almost. But as a result of the connections that we have in India, we're able to offer a program that where we stay almost every night of the tour in a palace or a palace hotel. The opulence, the service is amazing. This is kind of what makes the trip. This is the breakfast room of the Leela Palace in New Delhi. We stayed here the first time we went. We've changed around some of the hotels. They're all still palace hotels. Amazing, amazing, amazing. The service is incredible. The food is incredible. The rooms are really amazing. It is really, really a big part of the trip. And why we've also allowed enough time in the itinerary so that you can actually enjoy the hotels. Let's face it, there's no sense going on, a palace tour and staying in palace hotels if you're out on tour 12 hours a day and you never really get time to enjoy the hotel other than to sleep, which, kind of defeats the purpose of staying in a 5-star hotel. So we're going to be staying at the Leela Palace in New Delhi for a few nights. You might even want to fly in a day early and just have an extra night, sit up here on the rooftop terrace with this beautiful pool overlooking New Delhi, all of the green area around. I remember very vividly that many of our members at the end of the trip last year came back and stayed a few extra nights here because, they didn't know it in advance, but they were so grateful because it's, you just don't stay in hotels like this all the time. I certainly don't. But I highly recommend it. So that's where we're going to be staying while we're in Delhi. And we're going to take in a bunch of highlights on the 2 full days that we are experiencing Delhi. And there's, this is a big city, as you know, and there's so many things to see. At the same time, we've structured the trip, again, based on feedback we got from the last time and from my own experience, as well as that from our host, Amber, who has been to India, I don't know, 14 times or something like that, so that you can both enjoy the hotel, but also go out and explore a bit of Delhi on your own. So let me touch on a few of the highlights on our first half day and the first full day, because again, jet lag, it does kind of play havoc with you on that length of a tour, that length of a flight, I should say. So we're only going to take a half day. There's 2 key things we're going to visit here, and they're adjacent to one another. And these harken back to the earliest parts of India's history. So first of all, Qutb Minar, which is adjacent to the Mehrauli Archaeological Park, it's a tall minaret and a victory tower. And this was celebrating the victory of actually Islam over the Hindu kingdom. And so there's going to be a theme here because, India, as you know, is dominated by a few different religions, Hindu being, of course, the majority. But we're going to see a lot of the Muslim aspects of India as well as the Jain aspect, which is a much smaller religion I'll tell you about in a minute. And this is what I really, really like about India is that, there is certainly still conflict, religious-based conflict in India. If we think about the relationship between India and Pakistan, if we think about Kashmir in the very north of India and all these different things. But by and large, when you see it in Delhi, it certainly shifted my understanding and my attitude to how these religions can and do quite effectively coexist in Delhi. And again, that is not a universal truth. We all know there's still issues going on, but by and large, on the ground, on the street, when you visit these places, and Mehrauli, the archaeological park that is adjacent to Qutb Minar, is a testament to, it's sort of an example of history, Indian history going back to the 10th century. Of course, it goes long back beyond that, but they've got remnants and sites and so on over a 200-acre park that cover literally 1,000 years of history, right up to the colonialist era. And of course, the British were in charge, as it were, for almost 90 years leading up to Indian independence. So we're going to see a lot in the first day. In the first half day, we've still got a whole afternoon free. For those that are anxious to get out and do some more, you might want to visit, for example, the Red Fort, which is a Mughal fort from the 17th century. But otherwise, and I remember this from our last trip, you might want to just soak in the opulence of the Leela Palace where we're staying, because we have another full day in India, and our second day, again, we're going to see a couple of different things. First of all, we're going to visit the Jama Mosque, which is one of the largest mosques in the whole of India. It's really a remarkable place. I can remember meeting some children outside the mosque when we were there before, in fact, in this big square that's in front of the mosque. And again, getting a great story about the relationship to Islam that modern day Hindus have, and I'm talking about the average, the ordinary people, as it were. But the highlight of this day for me is, well, there's a couple things. First of all, we're going to go into Old Delhi, which is the part where, if you conjure up the image of Delhi in your mind of, bulls, of cows in the street, that's Old Delhi. So we're going to take a pedicab ride around. So we're going to be literally 2 of us in a little carriage with a local Indian driver pedaling around the streets. There'll be cars buzzing around. There'll be cows, as I say. It's, and then you go, yeah, now I'm in India. You might not realize it the first day, because we'll have been in New Delhi and we'll see these sort of grand structures and buildings. But when you get to Old Delhi, then you'll know we're in India. And there will be a point in the day where you go, oh, thank God I'm staying at the Leela, because it's grimy, it's dirty, and it's not that dirty, but this is what you came for as much as you came for the opulent side of India. And we'll visit a spice market, and we'll get sort of, this whole, local Indian gentleman is going to, or woman, will explain all about the spice trade and how that all goes down. And he's going to try and flog a bunch of spices. And you're going to be seeing hawkers in the street, because as soon as they see, tourists coming along, and it's all part of the experience. And Delhi is a great place to sort of take that all in. The next day we're going to check out, and we're going to fly down to Udaipur. If you look at the scene here, and if you look in the background, you might see the big white building in the back. And if you recognize it, you will, because that is the Lake Palace of Udaipur, which was made famous in the 1980s James Bond film Octopussy. We stayed in the Lake Palace the last time because it is another 5-star luxury hotel. But honestly, this time we decided not to stay there for a couple different reasons. One is the hotel's getting a little dated. It's still lovely and it's cool, but it's cooler to look at than be in and look out. And number one, and number two, the fact is, although the hotel obviously has a sort of a taxi boat that goes in and out of town, you just don't feel the freedom to be able to go out and around as you did. So we are staying in Udaipur at another Leela Palace, which looks out over at the Lake Palace and all of the scenery around on Lake Pichola. This is the lake that we're sitting on here. This is another incredible hotel. And so, as I say, we wanted, and I don't normally include a lot of pictures about the hotels, but the hotels are so beautiful, so elegant. Although our trip is informal, as they always are, but you almost feel like you want to get dressed up like the folks in this picture. And of course, you don't have to, but the Leela Palace is another incredible place to stay while in Udaipur, and a great base for all of the things that we're going to see in and around the city. So the day that we get in, we're going to take a little boat ride around the lake. We're going to see the temple, which is on the other side of the lake, called Jagmandir. We're going to see a lot of temples. And, the interesting thing is here, when I remember when I read through the itinerary of the first time we went, I thought, oh, temple, another temple. But the detailed architecture and the story that goes along with all of these temples and how they're all linked to the Maharaj that were, the rulers of that particular region of India. I can tell you, you won't get bored of them. You might, but you probably won't, because one is more spectacular than the other. And they just, each one is a treasure into itself. So we'll visit the Jagdish temple. We'll ride around the lake. And again, we'll have some time to visit the local market in Jodhpur, in Udaipur, which will sort of round out our stay there. We're then going to drive up to Udaipur. And on the way to Udaipur, which I didn't put a picture in here, because it is a bit of a longer drive. It's about 5 hours in total. It's, I think, our longest drive of the tour. But it's not a bad thing, because you do get to see some of the rural countryside. And again, we're on this trip. It was important to me that we combine, the opulence of these beautiful palace hotels together with wandering around in the markets and the hustle bustle of local India, as well as urban India and rural India. We're trying to give a little bit of everything, because let's face it, some people who go to India, as I say, our host Amber, who's been 14 times, will want to go back and explore more of the country. But for a lot of people, it's kind of like, yeah, this is a one-time thing. And so this trip kind of gives you a little bit of the best of everything. And I say that take that with a grain of salt, because to say that this is the best, there's so many things in India. But anyway, I digress. We will make our way to Jodhpur. On the way, we're going to be stopping at a Jain temple, which is, I just lost my notes here for a second. We're going to be stopping at the Ranakpur Jain temple. And Jainism is another one of India's religions it's not terribly well known. In fact, I think there's only like 5 million people in the world that practice Jainism. But it's one of those things that, now, having been there, I took some time to do some reading about Jainism. I wish I had done it in advance, and it's why we suggest that you look it up. Jain is Jain, and it is a religion that is, well, they're all somewhat similar. I mean, there's philosophies that are the same, but it's, they've got sort of 5 key doctrines inside of the Jain religion. But the temple itself is another masterpiece and different, but just as opulent than all the other temples. So it's a great sort of halfway point between Udaipur and Jodhpur. And it is important because it's actually one of the holiest places in the whole Jain religion. And we actually have a lot of Jains, people practicing or following Jain religion in Canada, who have obviously immigrated from India. In any event, we'll arrive later in the afternoon in Jodhpur, which is known as the Blue City. And this picture actually is a great one because it does capture what the city looks like when you're looking out from the fort to the surrounding town. It's like the buildings are literally all painted in blue, and I'm not exactly sure why, and it kind of doesn't matter, but and you'll forget about it for a moment because we're checking in here. And this is the Umaid Bhawan Palace. I can safely say that this was, of all of the incredible palace hotels we stayed in, this was the most incredible of the incredible ones for obvious reasons. You can see it here, and you can imagine we pulled up to in front of the palace, and I can't guarantee that this will happen exactly the same way, but literally they rolled out a red carpet. They had an Indian band playing. They were throwing roses out. I mean, it was completely surreal when we arrived here at Umaid Bhawan. Not to mention that you go into this grand hall, and I'll tell you, there's museums, the grandest of grand museums in the world, barely compare to what this place is like. It is actually still an active palace in the fact that there's one wing of it, it is huge, that is still occupied by the Maharaj that are responsible for the Jodhpur area. It is a fantastic spot. You have lunch, or sorry, I should say breakfast outside in the gardens, with tea overlooking this immaculately kept place. There are no more words to describe. That's why I just put pictures in, and I'll just stop talking about it. But it is a phenomenal place to stay. And a great place to explore this region of Jodhpur. And we're going to first of all head out to the countryside around Jodhpur. We'll have driven through the countryside to get there, but on this trip specifically, we're going to go out in 4x4s. We're going to visit a small village, or maybe two, that are near to the town. And again, you'll get to see what life in rural India is all about. Admittedly, a little bit of it is staged. It's hard to get really rural, but it is still a great example of what people are doing and how they're living their lives. And let's face it, as we all know, I mean, the vast majority of Indians are well below what we would consider to be the poverty line. And so, but witnessing that, talking to them, they're just charming, lovely people, and the hospitality in India is remarkable. So we'll get a sense of that as we drive around for a little countryside 4x4 tour. In the afternoon, we'll come back and we're going to visit the fort Mehrangarh of Jodhpur that you see here. This is a remarkable place. They're all so much remarkable. This sits on top of a hill that's about 500 feet high, and it's a 5-kilometer long fort that contains some masterpieces of Indian royalty. We will have a couple of hours. We'll get toured around part of it, and we'll have a bit of free time to explore some of it. There are so many masterpieces inside this fort, not to mention when you stand on the edge here and you look out over the Blue City, you just have to pinch yourself. And you'll see far in the distance, you'll see that big cupola of the Umaid Bhawan Palace that we're staying in. It's absolutely surreal. So, this will be a real highlight. We'll take another tuk-tuk ride in the evening, and we'll have dinner at a rooftop restaurant at another part of town where we will look back at the fort that sort of looms large over the city. We'll leave Jodhpur and make our way up to Jaipur. This time, actually, we're going to be flying up to Jaipur. My experience, we drove it the last time, but after one long drive in India, and the vehicles are comfortable and all, but it's still a long way. So this time I said, no, let's fly. So we're going to fly from Jodhpur to Jaipur, and then we'll get in and we will find the Pink City. So Jodhpur is the Blue City, Jaipur is the Pink City, and the buildings are, not all, but a good majority of them are in fact all painted in pink. And once again, we're going to have a spectacular palace hotel, in this case, the Leela Palace. We're back at a Leela. These guys do an incredible job of creating hotels that are just masterpieces that really focus on the best of Indian design. I mean, it's like you wouldn't design your living room this way necessarily, but to experience it, to live it and breathe it for a day, to stay in the rooms, to experience this amazing Indian hospitality is again, it's really one of the reasons why this trip is so special. We have an extra night in Jaipur. You might want to take some time to experience the spa and wellness facilities of the hotel so that you can really take advantage of every aspect of this amazing stay. And again, you know, every time you walk into a hotel room, you think, is this for real? And yes, it is, because that's what this trip is all about. So Jaipur, a couple of things here to mention. In the morning of the day after we arrive, we're going to be visiting Amber Fort. This is the one that was in the introduction slide earlier on in the presentation, which is quite cool because it's an interesting blend of both Hindu and Muslim style of architecture. The Amber Fort previously has been famous because this was one of the ones that in the past the Maharajas would ride up to the fort and through the front gates by elephant. In fact, they used to do that and may still do it for tourists. However, we will not be participating in any elephant riding. That's obviously not really proper in this day and age. But nevertheless, you may still see them there, and so you can get a sort of sense of what life was like back then. And I also recall they had, you know, a whole bunch of locals dressed up in sort of period costumes to give you a sense of what you know, the life of the royalty and so on was like during this era. Couple of the other things that we're going to be seeing in Jaipur that I remember specifically is they have a very cool observatory that was built again a century and a half ago with a giant sundial. In fact, all of the structures in this observatory are sort of oriented to the sun and the moon and other celestial bodies. And this huge sundial, I don't know if it's the largest in the world, but it's actually functioning. You know, you could practically set your watch to it. For some reason, that one sticks out in my mind. But later on that day, we'll visit this Hawa Mahal. This is kind of the you know, the landmark, if you will, of Jaipur. All in, it doesn't really look pink here, but it's more pink than it looks in this picture. And we'll finish up the day with another visit to a local market where, yeah, you'll have the chance to sort of wander in amongst the locals. And I do remember it's daunting for people at first because, you know, here you are walking around, and I know for me, you know, I always think, my God, you know, we have such privileged lives to be able to live how we're living and visit how we're visiting and stay in these hotels. And here's people with, by our standards, that have nothing. But you'll quickly realize that, you know, that we are all human beings at the same time, and you know, the friendliness and the hospitality, and you'll strike up conversations, and they're as curious to know about you as you are about them. And it's a wonderful experience. We've left a whole day free in Jaipur. Again, a philosophy of mine is always that we have at least one free day, and this is a great place to do it. You may just want to hang around in the hotel and soak up all of the you know, the luxuries that the Leela Palace has to offer. But you may want to, for example, visit another fort, Nahara. Okay, I'm not even going to pronounce it. It's a long four-syllable fort that is outside of Jaipur that is quite remarkable for those that are, again, very committed to learning about the history. This one here, Jal Mahal, is a fort that sits literally in the middle of the lake, as you can see here. This is a remarkable place. We didn't visit it the last time. I remember we caught a glimpse of it as we were sort of driving by. And so this is something that you could go and literally just take a boat and sort of go around, be rowed around the fort that's in the middle of the lake. But of course, there's always that trinket shopping that I know some of our members never get too tired of. So that's an option as well. From Jaipur, we're then going to drive down to the south. We're going to head to Sawai Madhopur. And as we approach here, the landscape, again, a lot of this area of Rajasthan is basically desert or semi-desert. Here, it changes a little bit, and you get more sort of foliage and more tree cover. And for me, it was really reminiscent of, like, you know, Serengeti or Masai Mara in Africa, which is, of course, partly why we're coming here, because Sawai Madhopur is the the gateway to Ranthambore National Park. So we're going to be staying at a safari lodge. So again, another different variation on this trip is a little bit of the Indian safari experience. It's a lovely lodge. It's not quite as opulent as the other ones, but still very charming. You can imagine sort of British officers coming to stay in this lodge to go and shoot animals as they did back in the day. It's a lovely spot. So we'll be here for 2 nights, and we're going to get into Ranthambore. And actually, the picture here should be of a Bengal tiger, because that's the thing that most people are on the lookout for. India, of course, one of the countries in the world that is still home to a population of tigers, sadly declining, but Ranthambore National Park is one of the best places to try and see tigers. It's funny, when I was glancing through some websites earlier about Ranthambore, they talk about, guaranteed tiger sightings. There's never a guarantee, particularly with tigers. If you've been on safari in Africa, like I was with a group of members earlier this year, you're almost guaranteed to see lions. There's never a guarantee of anything, but tigers are very, very elusive. There's not that many of them. And depending on sort of the agility of the driver and all the rest of it, there's a hope. But this is probably one of the best chances that you'll get without going literally into the middle of nowhere in northern India or in Nepal or Bhutan. It's one of the best chances you'll get to see tigers. But there's a lot of other things to see in Ranthambore. For example, they've got leopard, also not so easy to see. They've got hyenas, they've got water buffalo, they've got sloth. It really is a safari experience in the middle of India. One of the cool things, of course, are the langur monkeys, which you don't often see on other safaris. You see other types of monkeys, but these guys are pretty cool. And so there's a much higher chance that we'll see those than the tiger, but we're going to trust our luck that maybe we'll see some of those guys too. Finally, we're going to end up second to last leg of our trip is going to be by train. As I mentioned before, riding the train in India is nothing like riding the train in Europe, but in some ways it's kind of similar to riding the train in Canada, with all due respect to Via Rail and our friends there. But it's kind of a bumpy, sort of a little bit slightly dilapidated, but generally, certainly on these routes, a safe and comfortable way to travel. It's only a couple hours journey. So again, we wanted to include that because it's an experience to arriving at the station, all the people that are there, and we'll be going first class. So it's pretty comfortable, and everybody was very thankful that we had a chance to ride the train the last time we were in India. So we're going to do it. And when we arrive later in the afternoon, we are going to be in Agra, which is, of course, one of the absolute highlights and most popular things to do in India, which is the Taj Mahal. But we're not going to see the Taj Mahal right away. And the interesting thing is that you can kind of drive almost up to it in multiple directions and not even see it. It's like, it's huge, but it's almost a little bit hidden. But what we're going to do is, first of all, go to Mehtab Bagh, which is another temple that is on the other side of the river. And we did it in reverse when we last went, I should say. We went to Taj Mahal first, and then we went to Mehtab Bagh. And the Shah Jahan that intended to build, his intention was to build a mirror image, or basically a mirror image of the Taj Mahal. Didn't quite succeed. And while it is a very interesting temple to visit, what makes it interesting is that you can see across the river Taj Mahal from the distance. And so it's your sort of first glimpse of this rather incredible structure. So we'll do that in the afternoon. We'll check into the hotel, and then we're going to wake you up real early, because the best time, and I regret we did not do this the last time, you got to go and see Taj Mahal first thing in the morning. The sunrise over the Taj, that soft, glow of light early in the morning is one of those things that one will never forget. So that is how we're going to experience the Taj Mahal early in the morning. We'll arrive and we'll tour around the mausoleum itself. Of course, this is a mausoleum, a testament to the love that the ruler had for Queen Mahal, which of course took 17 years to build, and some 20,000 people that were working on it. It is everything that they say it is. This picture, by the way, is perfectly clear day. It's not always that clear in Agra or in any major city in India. So, the odds are there'll be a light haze of air pollution, because that's kind of the reality. But another benefit to going early in the morning is that you get a better light and a better quality of air than you generally get by the afternoon. So once again, we've done it that way. This is a long day. I will say right off the bat, just because we're going to visit Taj Mahal in the morning, then we're going to make a stop at Agra Fort just for a little while. But this is a very impressive fort in Agra as well. And then we are going to catch our mini coach back to Delhi and arrive in the latter part of the afternoon. So it's quite a long day. But as our last full day, it will be a very, very memorable one, I can tell you from that. And so we'll get back into Delhi. We'll have one more night. And for those that wish to fly home, then the main program will end there, and you'll fly back the following day from Delhi back to Canada or wherever else you may go. Or we've added on a post program, an optional extension. And this one is down to Kerala. In fact, so Kerala, as I mentioned from the map at the beginning, if you remember, is very down in the southern tip of India. And Kerala is actually one of the wealthiest provinces in India. And it's also much less densely populated than northern India. So it's a totally different vibe. And of course, the climate is different because we're much, much further south. It's still warm, but it's more of a tropical, humid warm, as opposed to more of a desert warm in the north. We're going to arrive into Kochi, or Fort Cochin is what the British called it, which is on the Indian Ocean, and this is the gateway to Kerala and to the backwaters. We're going to have a couple of days in Kochi. It's a very, very cool town. Again, you see a lot of remnants of British colonialism. We're going to head out to visit a village nearby, Kumbalangi, where we will have a chance to experience some local Indian craft making. And again, Kerala is a very different vibe, a very different attitude of people. It's India, but it's India light. I remember the first time I went to India, actually, I went to Kerala first. And I was really like, oh, wow, this is nothing what I imagined India to be. And so in some ways, it'll be a bit of a relief, not to say that the first part of the trip it's a very different experience. So we're going to go out and again see some of the local craft making. Again, you can see the vegetation here, palm trees. It's all very lush, quite different than what we will have experienced in Rajasthan. And then we will then make our way, after spending 2 nights in Kochi, down to Alappuzha, and Alappuzha is the gateway to the Kerala backwaters. On the way, we'll stop at another amazing palace. It's a British palace that was called Matnacherry. And then we'll check in for 1 night, which again, you will never forget, on a houseboat. So Kerala is a region that is characterized by a whole network of canals that were man-made through all of the rice fields. And so as you're cruising around, we'll spend a whole day and a night on a luxurious houseboat that looks something like this. They typically have 2 bedrooms on them, 1 front, 1 back. There's a dining room. They're all staffed. You get fed breakfast, lunch, and dinner on board this houseboat as you cruise around with this rather amazing landscape. And a lot of the canals are interesting because, it's like a highway. You're driving along in a canal, and all of the rice fields all around, as far as you can see, are below the level of the canal. So it's quite an experience. I can't say enough about it. It's a fantastic way to spend the last couple of days in India is by doing our houseboat program in Kerala. So we'll then fly from Kochi back to Delhi and back home from there, or onwards to other journeys. So that pretty much wraps up the program. Let me give you a few of the details. This program, again, in Canadian dollars. For what you get, I think it's incredibly well priced. So this is, these are the pricing in Canadian dollars, double or single occupancy and again, September 20th to October the 4th for the main program. You get on here, again, there's 2 weeks, 14 nights of accommodation, with most of them being in these palace hotels, the only exception being the Safari Lodge, which is not 5-star, but it's still very, very nice. And the hotel as well in Agra is not a palace hotel, but it's still a lovely hotel for the night that we're going to be staying there. You've got breakfast every day. We've got either a lunch or a dinner. When we did this trip before, again, the comment that I got back was, "Whoa, so much food." And so that's why we just have one meal a day included, but it also gives you the opportunity to try some local food. And I know that the question will sort of come up, is it safe to eat the food locally? What about the water? I can tell you, of all 20 people on our last trip, not one single person got sick in India. That is not usually what happens. Quite honestly, almost always somebody is going to get a bit of a stomach bug, because that's kind of what happens, even if you're super careful. But because of the places we're staying and the places that we're taking you, the odds are pretty good that, you know, it's not like, you know, everybody's going to get sick. I say get prepared for it, but this is the way to see India and really enjoy it and not worry so much about that. So all the details, of course, are in the program itinerary, the post-program, those few extra days, including the domestic flights, shown here for a couple grand. You can stay for those extra days and experience the houseboating in Kerala. Again, all the details of the inclusions and so on are in the program itinerary. Of course, airfare and cancellation insurance are required, are extra, and we can facilitate both of those for you, as well as the entry visa to India, which is quite easily done online in advance. Airfare wise, it's still a year away, but you pretty much looking at this range. In fact, I was looking at airfares this month for India, out of Toronto. They're in and around $1,900. I think if you book it 6 months in advance, it should be quite a bit less than that. So just to give you an idea for budgeting purposes, and we will throw in a couple of $100 extra off if you book early, so that we can secure with a deposit our spaces in all the hotels and have you come along with us. So great, time to answer some questions, Paula. I'm done talking.
No, that was great. It made me excited. I love India myself. So yeah, it's just not enough words to put it into exactly why, but it's definitely one of the favorites.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I'll field any questions that have come in, and but otherwise, of course, you can email us if you have something you want to ask.
We do have a couple questions that have come in here, Gordon. Member was asking, with regards to the varying ranges we visit, what suggestions do you have in terms of packing for the different weather from the north, central to south?
The weather's going to be hot. The weather's going to be very warm. So, and thanks for asking the question, because I just want to qualify the timing. I picked specifically this time of the year to go because the end of September is the tail end of the low season, of the rainy or the monsoon season, and it's the beginning of the high season. So if this whole program were 3 weeks later, it would be about $2,500 more expensive. So that's part of the reason why we choose that time of the year. There's also a few less tourists, and it's warm, in fact, even hot some days, but not oppressively so. And there is a chance of some rain, but not, you know, you're not very, very unlikely that you're going to get like you know, a huge rain. That being said, I'm in the south of Spain in Seville when it's normally dry as a bone this time of the year, and it's been raining all day. You never know. And in Kerala, it's tropical. So temperature and weather wise, it's similar. So you need warm weather gear. There's not going to be any cold weather on this trip at all.
Perfect. I have a member following up with a question. Ellen's asking here, temperature described as very warm, but is it humid? So do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, it's not so humid in Rajasthan because this is the desert where it's quite arid. Kochi, so Kerala is on the humid side. So it's not super humid in Rajasthan. It's actually dry. I wouldn't say it's dry as Arizona, but it's definitely a drier heat. But Kerala is tropical.
Yeah, perfect. Had another member asking here with regards to your comment on the food. If members, if don't have spicy palate, is there something that is
We don't do it.
suitable?
I shouldn't say we don't do anything spicy. We're not eating Indian spice. Canadians, I'm saying Canadians, other than Indian Canadians, won't generally tolerate Indian levels of spice. We're not eating that. These hotels cater primarily to foreigners who don't want that. So there will be some spicy dishes, but we always say, in addition to the fact that they know from in advance how to handle our guests, it's generally not spicy. So it's pretty mild spice. And if anybody's like, oh, I don't really, if anybody's really has an issue with spice, we will put that in our list of dietary requirements, and to make sure that it's even blanded down one more level. But almost nobody had an issue with I don't think anybody had an issue with spice on the last trip.
I can attest to that. So I don't have a huge spice tolerance, unfortunately, as much as I love all the dishes. And there's a lot of mild to medium dishes in India that can suit for people like me. So
exactly.
Yeah. Another in-demand question always is, do we know who the host will be?
We don't. We haven't assigned the host that far in advance, to my knowledge. I guarantee you it'll be a host that you love, because everybody loves all our hosts. At least that's what we've heard so far. It's hard for me to say. It could be me. I don't know for sure. It could be Amber. It could be Alfie.
We have a slew of great hosts, and I've been hearing actually from members even right now, like in Croatia, and our members that were with us in Turkey, the last 4 trips we've had right now, that hearing great things about all of our hosts. So we don't have it yet, but we will share that for those that book at the pre-trip.
Yeah, it's great because to be attached to the host, because I know that some people love Todd, or they love Alfie, or whatever it happens to be, but they're all really great. So I can assure you that you'll have a great host, but I don't know who it is.
Yeah. Okay. We need some surprises along the way.
That's a
Anyhow. A couple of questions that have rolled in. Is there twin accommodation on the houseboat? I believe the answer to that is yes.
Yes. So
that's an easy one.
Typically have 2 bedrooms. Some of them even have 3 bedrooms. They have up to 5 bedrooms. So we generally go for the 2 or 3 bedroom houseboats, which means we'll probably have 2 or 3 of them. And then and there's basically either double or twin, just like in hotels.
Yeah. And Ellen's asking about air conditioning in the accommodations along the way, or air conditioning along the way. I know hotels will have it. Ellen, can you clarify? Are you asking if there's air conditioning in the vehicle transport, or if you are wanting to clarify about accommodation?
There's air conditioning everywhere at these hotels. Yeah. Absolutely. There's air. The only times we don't have air conditioning is when we're out and outside, but and obviously the forts and the palaces and those things, some of the rooms will have air conditioning, but no, the hotels are the best.
She's submitted to clarify it's vehicle transport. She was asking.
100%. Yeah, we use very comfortable vehicles, absolutely air conditioned, super comfy, super state of the art vehicles. No problem.
Perfect. Fabulous. I think that's all the questions that I've had that have come in already. So members can reach out to Barb or myself if you have anything else that pops up, and we have an additional information document on this as well to provide details, which helps answer questions you have and don't know you have yet. So just feel free to reach out, give us a phone call or an email.
Indeed, we do try to anticipate all the questions with our additional information, which is kind of like an FAQ. Of course, there could always be questions, but I find in general, if you have a good read through that, most of the stuff that you'll need to know, at least at this point, in order to decide whether to join us, should be answered by the trip, by those documents. But of course, we're always there, so it's not like if you have a question, drop us a note. If Paula or Barb don't know, one of us will know, because between our team, we've been to India a lot. So, we know the country well. As a final note, we have a couple more webinars next week, and then I'm going to be off with a group of members in the South Pacific for the first couple of weeks of November. So if for those that are interested, we're talking about next week our fall trip to Provence and Côte d'Azur next week on the 24th. And following that, our brand new and exciting active wellness program in the Austrian Alps. For those who are looking for, this is going to be a whole new series of programs we're going to be releasing. So to get you out and walking in the beautiful Alps and also soaking in the thermal baths. So if you want to find out about that trip, that is next week on the 1 week from today at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Paula has posted those links in the chat box on the webinar. Of course, this replay will be posted on our YouTube channel and will be sent out to all of you in a link together with the program itinerary before the end of the week. So look forward to that. Thank you for tuning in. Do come along and enjoy India with us. You won't regret it on this trip. People still rave to me about what a great time they had the last time we went. So would love to have you along. Take care. Have yourselves a great afternoon, a great rest of the day, and we'll see you all again very soon.